Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of Homemade, and today you all, we are making, I'm going to show you two ingredients and see if you can guess. If you guess peach cobbler bread pudding, you are correct. Now, this recipe, it is so simple. This is not your typical old-fashioned bread pudding. Now, let's go ahead and get started because again, this recipe is very simple. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to chop our bread. I'm going to use a loaf and a half of French bread. If you're using a longer loaf or a bigger loaf, then you'll only need about 3/4 of that loaf. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to chop our loaves up. Now, if you want to break them up, that is totally fine. I like to chop mine up because it just gives it, I guess, a better consistency. So once I chop this up, we are going to toast this because we don't want our bread pudding to be so soggy. So the best way to avoid that is to toast your bread before you prepare it. I already have my oven preheated to 385 degrees. We're going to spread this onto our baking sheet, place it into our oven for about 10 minutes, let it crisp up a little because this was in the refrigerator. And after that, we'll take it out, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and put our bread pudding together. So I've popped our bread into the oven, and while it's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to prepare the filling. And again, it is very simple. It is like your typical bread pudding, except we are going to add the peaches in there. Now, for our peaches, I just have a regular 15-ounce can of peaches because we are going to make just an 8x8 size pan of our bread pudding. Now I am going to drain the juices off of my peaches. That's very important because we are going to use this juice inside of our filling. And I'm going to set that aside. Now, what we'll do is we'll take our peaches out, and I like to slice mine in half. In this cup, I have 1 cup of milk. I did let it sit out to room temperature. We're going to use 2 eggs. We're going to use a 1/2 cup of brown sugar and 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. We're going to use a little cinnamon, a little allspice, vanilla, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Now, with the butter, when you melt it, you do want to let it cool because you don't want it to be so hot that it cooks your eggs. So, we'll go ahead and start preparing our mixture because our bread is almost done. So, you're going to crack your eggs. Now, with your eggs, you'll go ahead and you'll whisk those really well. You'll add in your sugar. You're going to put in 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And again, you all, this recipe is so simple. You're going to put in a 1/2 tablespoon of allspice. You're going to put in 1 tablespoon of your cinnamon. And we are going to put a little cinnamon on the top of it also. Whisk that up really well. I'm going to put in my milk. And even though I'm going to probably use all of my syrup, I still like to pour into my measuring cup just to see how much, because I at least want a 1/2 cup of syrup. And I'm right at a 1/2 cup. Alrighty. Now we're going to mix this in really well. Now we'll put in our butter. As you can see, I've taken our bread out of the oven, and it is now time to mix it all together. I just kind of like to pick it up, toss it into a bowl, and you can see it did toast really well. So I just like to take this, pour it over the bread, and just kind of toss it around in there really well before I add in the peaches. Now I'll take my peaches, put them in, just toss those in there, get them mixed in really well. And that is our bread pudding mixture. We're going to take our pan and just place it into our pan. I'm going to take my cinnamon, sprinkle just a little cinnamon on top. We're going to put this into the oven. Let this cook for 1 hour on 350 degrees uncovered. After the hour, we're going to take it out, let it rest for 5 minutes, come back and sample this goodness. Our bread pudding has cooked. It has chilled for about 5 minutes. Now, I will say I did let mine cook for only about 45 minutes. If you want to go the full hour, that is totally fine. But once I reach about that 45-minute mark, I always like to check it. And if my middle is set, I'll go ahead and take it out. Now, this is our bread pudding, you all. I like to put a glaze over mine, and the glaze is very simple. The only thing I did was mix a couple tablespoons of whole milk with some vanilla flavor and about 3/4 cups of powdered sugar, and all I like to do is just kind of drizzle it over the bread pudding. Now it is time for us to sample our bread pudding. And I'm just gonna go ahead. Oh, it smells so good. And you can see the peaches in there. If you can see, you all, it looks so good. And it is better when it's eaten hot. You all, this bread pudding, again, if you like peach cobbler, this is everything. I promise you. If you make this, you will not be disappointed at all. It is not too sweet. It has all the flavors in it with the crunchiness and the softness of the bread. This is it. This is it. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our channel if you want to keep seeing our easy homemade recipes. You all, we made bread pudding, peach cobbler bread pudding at that, and it is awesome. Now, as I always say, cooking is as easy or as hard as you make it. But I promise you, if you just keep it simple, be yourself, life in itself can be so much easier. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Homemade. And until next time, continue to be great.